Um, Sometimes I'm like, oh wait, before I get into what I want to talk about today, book update. Oh my god, I just wrote an amazing scene yesterday, and I'm about like okay today. Maybe not today. I'm about to wrap up a chapter I've been working on for a long. This chapter is long. It's a long chapter. But I'm finally wrapping it up. I just reached the climax. Now it's like post-climax, I guess. Kind of like an epilogue, sort of, for the chapter at least. So I'm just wrapping that up, and then I'm gonna have another long-ass chapter, and then there might be, yeah, I think I might wrap it up after that. I might do a young epilogue. We'll see. But yeah, the next chapter is going to be long as well, so that might take, I'm gonna be honest, that might take a week or two to finish. 2 weeks, maybe 3, I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to expand upon yesterday's topic. Hear me out. I think I was actually brainstorming yesterday. I was like, how do we really fix this issue? Because this is, if you don't know, yesterday I was talking about population decline and all those things. I know. But I think I actually came up with some pretty good ideas, guys. You can tell me what you think, but I think these are pretty decent ideas. And these are just ideas. They're just ideas, okay? So, yesterday I talked about how you're seeing a global fertility crisis, global birth crisis, where almost not every country. I was saying that every continent except the African continent is below replacement rate, which means they're not replacing themselves, which means they're shrinking, which means they're headed towards extinction. You know, by definition, you're shrinking. Eventually, there'll be no people left. But before that happens, there'll be all sorts of things like your economy will collapse, and you're already seeing Japan and South Korea and places like Italy going through all sorts of issues because economic issues because of their population deficit, and it's the things like labor shortage. They're in desperate need of labor, and the tax burden increases on the average taxpayer, all these sort of things. So there's a whole bunch of issues tied to population collapse, and the ultimate end is extinction. But there's so many terrible things that happened before then that even current generations will experience now. So I was like, okay, this is a serious crisis. There's so many things we could go into about how bad it is, like villages being closed down, small towns disappearing, ghost towns, all those sort of things, schools being shut down, yada 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 yada. It's bad. But we need solutions, don't we? We need solutions. So I was like, I've discussed some of this before, but I really do think motherhood has been turned into this terrible thing that I think a lot of young girls are genuinely afraid of. I remember this girl I was involved with, I remember having a conversation with her about children, and she was saying that she said she's genuinely terrified of pregnancy and all these sort of things, like she's scared. Like when she thinks about having kids, of being pregnant and giving birth, like it actually terrifies her. And I think this is a issue of messaging. I think a lot of girls have been propagandized into believing that pregnancy and motherhood is just a scary thing and you should flee from it. I really do think a lot of girls feel that way, which is why when you ask them about the future, they don't really talk about children like that. And if they do talk about children, maybe they want to have one or two. Maybe. It's always an if, not a when, but an if. It's a question. And I do think a lot of them are terrified of the concept. So, with that in mind, I think we need to restructure our education system because there's a lot of problems. Again, in the backdrop of a world where the populations are rapidly declining, with each generation, the process, humanity, I mean, the population of these regions gets cut in half. Sometimes it's worse than that. South Korea, when they have a fertility rate of 0.78, which is, it doesn't sound real, but it's so, yeah. So they get cut by more than half with each passing generation. But when you consider all these things and the economies that are collapsing and the cultures that are being erased as a result, there's just many consequences of population collapse. When you consider all that, it's like, this is an urgent matter that needs redressing in the form of our education system. We need to address the education system, because why are so many people convinced that pregnancy and motherhood is a terrible thing? So I think, you know how you have career day where, professionals come to school and talk to kids? Why don't we have moms coming to schools and talking to kids, and dads too? Like dads for the young boys, moms for the young girls, where they like pitch motherhood, pitch fatherhood, where it's like you make it attractive. So you have a mom that's actually successful, she's happily married, she's raising her kids well, she actually enjoys what she does, and she comes to a school to make the case for why motherhood is something to aspire to. And you start when they're young, so that this is something they genuinely aspire to. It's not a question, and because what happens with a lot of girls is they go through school and they're told career is everything. There's nothing except career, and then they graduate high school and then they go to university, and they're just going through this pipeline. And by the time they're actually seriously considering marriage and children, they're in their 30s, which is like, historically, that's very, very, very late. Historically, you'd get married much younger, have children much younger. The issue with, like I've discussed before, women's peak fertility is from age 20 to 25. 20 to 25 peak fertility. After it's generally speaking, it's down. No, not generally speaking. Yeah, it's true that it's just downhill from there. Some women maintain high fertility within their 30s. It's rare, but it happens. But it's still, your peak is still in your 20s. Your peak is still age 20 to 25. Some women remain quite fertile from age 30 onwards, but it's rare. By age 35, it's a drastic drop off. By age 35, you're rolling the dice. You're lucky if you have one, let alone like two. So it's all important is to let people know, like at least give them the information. If they still choose to wait until their 30s to do that, that's their prerogative. But we need to give people this information so they understand. And that's also important because you want larger families. You don't want small families, like 1 or 2 kids, because you can't grow society that way. We need to be growing, guys. I know a lot of people think that we're overpopulated, which is another lie. We're not overpopulated. Like I said yesterday, the vast majority of humanity's population is concentrated in very specific regions. Population is not evenly distributed. So India and China by themselves account for more than a third of the Earth's population. Think about that. India and China by themselves, just 2 countries. 1.4 billion each. That's 2.8 billion in India and China alone. 1 to 3%. I actually looked this up yesterday. 1 to 3% of the Earth's land is actually inhabited. Is actually inhabited by humans. 1 to 3%. The rest is just not being used. So the vast majority of land on this earth is unoccupied by human beings. A lot of it is wild land with all sorts of crazy weather conditions and whatnot. A lot of it is very livable, but just not using it. But there's also a large amount of it that needs to be tamed, it needs to be conquered. But that's the story of humanity. We conquered the seasons. You know how we used to die during winter? When winter came, people just died. I don't know if people realize this. It used to be the case that when the winter season came, if you did not migrate to a warmer area, if you did not get to a warmer area in time and you were just caught up in winter, you just perish. You cooked, or the opposite of cooked, you were frozen. Because we didn't have any way to fight against the cold. But we evolved. We learned new tricks. We got smarter. We did new things, and we eventually conquered the seasons. So now you can live in a region during a harsh winter. You don't have to migrate every time winter is coming. You don't have to trek long distances to find a warm place to settle down because you won't survive the cold. Now we have electricity and we can heat our homes and we can do all this sort of stuff. We have all these warm clothes. We have all this fancy tech. We build on fault lines. We build on mountains. We build all over the place. We can do all sorts of things through technology, and our technology is only improving. There's no reason we can't expand into these more wild environments and tame them. That's the story of humanity. So this idea that the earth is overpopulated is so stupid. It's so frustrating when people say that, because it's so not true. I feel like earth is nowhere near maximum capacity in terms of how many humans it can house. Even with India and China, I say there's not enough Indians. There's not enough Chinese people. Let them have 3 billion each. Screw it. Guys, we need to stop having this scarcity mindset, because this idea of too many people, it's actually going to really break it down. What do you mean there's too many people? Because that means someone has to go. There's a human being that's taking up too much space and there needs to be, like that's what you're saying when you're saying there's too many people. So we need to stop having this scarcity mindset. It's kind of dangerous. It's not kind of, it is dangerous. And it'll convince people that by any means necessary, you must shrink the population. And people can start doing some very nefarious things to achieve that goal, because, some people are psychos. And they'll convince themselves they're doing it for a good reason. But anyway, we need large families for that reason, so we convince young girls that this is a great thing to do. You're serving humanity by giving us the populations needed to sustain these amazing societies we've built, but you're also doing something that's fulfilling. It's spiritually fulfilling. It's fun. It's this, it's that. Like, there are many women who genuinely enjoy being moms. They exist, and they exist in large numbers. But I feel like the education has to be there. People have to be taught how to do it properly, the do's and the don'ts, the sort of things you want to avoid that will make your job harder, so on and so forth. We need to change the curriculums to reflect this. So doing case studies on successful moms in the neighborhood, like what are they doing right? Like why are they happy? Because that's an important thing. It's like you can just say go do that, go be a mom, go get married and have children, and then you don't really equip people to be successful at that. Yeah, it can be disastrous. In the same way you would equip people to pursue a certain career in law or medicine, whatever, right? You tell them the do's and the don'ts, and if you don't do it this way, it's going to be a lot harder, and you might not enjoy yourself, and you're just going to be burned down, yada yada. In the same way we equip people for those careers, we should equip people for parenthood, for marriage. Why don't we focus on that? It's such a big part of our lives, but we don't talk about it in school. Why don't we talk about marriage in school, actually? That's a great question now that I'm thinking about it. Like, why aren't they, classes on this stuff in schools? School is such a failure, man. Like, this is why I'm a homeschool my kids. I'm definitely going to homeschool my kids, because these are important lessons to teach kids while they're still young and malleable, impressionable. You need to get these ideas into their heads because the decisions they make while they're younger can affect them when they're older. So you need to teach them the importance of these things. Teach them the importance of abstinence. For as an example, there's a lot of data that supports the idea that the more people you sleep with, the more likely it is that you're going to have a hard time getting into a committed and happy relationship. And there's various reasons for that you can explore. And there's so much research that has gone into that topic. So it's not hearsay, it's not opinions. It's like, oh, this is backed by science. There's brain chemistry involved. There's a process called pair bonding. There's all sorts of things you can get into, but they don't teach us this in school. What they actually teach us in school is that, you know what, if you're a teenager, you can have sex if you want. Hey man, condoms, here's some condoms. It's crazy. That's the exact opposite of what you should be teaching teenagers. You know, you can teach them about contraceptives and all these sort of things, but you should be teaching them, like, not to do that. But if you do that, then here's protection. But, like, it's like, well, I don't know if you'd be handing out protection in high school. That's kind of weird, but in my opinion, at least. But, you know, like, can you please give people a proper education on this stuff? Because I feel like we're just teaching people the wrong things. We're setting them up for failure. And the evidence of that is, if you look at the current dating landscape, the current, like, marriage landscape, you look at how high divorce rates are and all these sort of things. Yeah. Our education has been poor, because it may, out of a different opinion, if I looked around and there was just success stories all over the place, but that's not the case. Anyone is being honest. If you're just looking around, that's not the case. So change the curriculum and bring mothers in. Maybe it should be a fixture. Have a mom class where you have a mom who just teaches about being a mom. I feel like that when society gets to that point, you know that we have our priorities in order. When you have a mom who's, well, wouldn't that defeat the purpose? Because she should be maybe she's a retired mom. She's completed the mission that is motherhood. You're never done, really, but, you know, like, the kids are grown and whatnot. So now she's a full-time teacher. Because you can't be a full-time teacher and a full-time mom. Yeah. But that would be fire. Have someone just full-time just teaches the importance of motherhood. That would be amazing. If society gets to that point, you know that we'll go then. Media narrative. Media is big. How often do you see, like, families being portrayed well on TV? Like, in the sense that it's good to have a family, you should have a family, have a large family, marriage is great. Every time we hear about marriage in a lot of TV shows and whatnot, oftentimes it's portrayed as this horrible thing. It's a drag. It's so much work. Divorce, all this sort of stuff. Children are chaotic and bratty and mean, and the parents hate the kids and the kids hate the parents. All this sort of stuff. It's very rare to come across family shows that paint family in a positive light. We need more of that. We need a lot more of that media. So the media landscape has to change, whether it's entertainment, whether it's how, you know, we report on families. We need, like, when we're talking about news coverage, like, news, you should, like, you know, interview families, I guess. Like just highlight, like, cool families doing cool things in their communities and whatnot. Like, guys, like, just imagery, what we see on the day-to-day basis. If you can center family in that, to show people that this stuff is actually good, it's actually wholesome and it's fulfilling, that can go a long way in convincing people that this is something that they should pursue. So just campaigns that celebrate big families and, you know, make motherhood look amazing. Just flip the script. So it just looks normal and it looks awesome, you know? Like, it just looks like something to aspire to. The government should get involved. You know, the government likes to get involved in all sorts of things. They should get involved in helping to push this cultural shift. So there are a lot of governments around the world are trying their best to provide economic incentives for people to get married and have kids and whatnot. They're giving, like, Hungary, like the country Hungary, like, I think mothers get tax breaks, tax credits and whatnot. They're doing that sort of stuff. These governments, they're trying a whole lot of things. So keep doing all that stuff. But yeah, also just a strong push to promote family, that image of husband, wife, children. Very, very, very important. This will help create a new generation of girls who are passionate about motherhood, a new generation of boys who are passionate about fatherhood, all that sort of stuff. Very, very important, because right now that's not the case. It's not the case right now. So messaging is key. Messaging is key. You have to pitch it. You have to sell it well. You have to convince people that this is a good thing. It's fun. It's important. It's crucial. It is crucial. We're talking about the survival of humanity. And then this part is something I'm particularly proud of. I think this is a good idea because when you're talking about, by the way, so I'm describing full-time motherhood, which means she'd be at home. She's fully invested in this idea of being a mom and being a wife. Because when you think about large families, so 4, 5, 6 kids, and historically that wasn't even that large. Historically speaking, having 6 kids was very normal back in the day. It's just so crazy that people think 6 kids is a lot now, when it was very normal just a few decades ago. Guys, you have to understand the fertility rate of a lot of countries was like 4 or 5 point something, 6 point something back in the day, which meant to have numbers that high, yeah, the average family would be having 5, 6 kids, and that would then so when you're having a fertility rate of like 4.2, for example, it means a lot of people having families of like 6+ kids, and then the ones that have maybe 1 or 2 bring the average down to like 4. To have a number as high as 4, it means like, oh my gosh, do you know how many families with maybe 50% or something, or maybe more than that, we're having upwards of 6 kids. That would have to be the norm, because you're then going to have to account for people that have no kids, or 1 or 2, and then they bring the number down to 4 point something. So it used to be very normal to have families like that. So that same 4 kids, that's not a large family, but I guess by today's standards it's a large family. Regardless, that's a full-time gig. I don't think you can be the best at that while also juggling a career. It's not going to happen, especially like a very intensive career, like something in medicine or law or engineering, whatever. Let's forget about it. You have to pick. And people don't want to hear that, because people are trying to have the best of both worlds. I can do everything all at once. It's like, yeah, it's not true. But people have been convinced that's true. You just have to pick. But it's like, I genuinely believe that motherhood and marriage and all these sort of things, that's way more fulfilling than a career in, take your pick. Because it's about sustaining humanity. And it's family, it's love, it's all these sort of things, which are like eternal, transcendental concepts. And that's not to say all women would have to go down this route. It's not about forcing people. Again, it's not about forcing people to do anything they don't want to do. It's about messaging. It's about encouraging people down one path instead of another. If people still want you to do this, then hey man, we're cooked. There's nothing. We tried our best, but I feel like we're not trying our best right now. I feel like we're not doing enough to promote motherhood, to promote marriage, all these sort of things. We could do a lot more than we're currently doing. But yeah, again, it's not about forcing anyone to do anything they want to do. Please understand me. Some people take it the wrong way. So if women are full-time mothers, how can you make that as fulfilling as it can be? One of the problems, at least in some neighborhoods in like 1950s America, where there are these stay-at-home moms, is that life would be very boring. They wouldn't have much to do with themselves, and you just feel trapped in the lifestyle, and you can end up going crazy because you're just staring at the same walls every day. You don't know what to do with yourself, and your life just becomes very unfulfilling. You love your children, you love your family, but you have a lot to offer the world. So it's like, how do we encourage stay-at-home mothers while also dealing with that problem? And here's the thing, that wasn't the case for everyone. So that era, that period always gets painted with a broad brush, but there were many neighborhoods where that was not a problem because there was a lot of community involvement. Women would be friends with their neighbors, so they would hang out with the woman next door who was also a stay-at-home mom, and you'd have a little group of women who would go do things together and whatnot. They would have bake sales, that have community events where everyone can come and have fun and all this sort of, like, they would do all sorts of things to occupy their time while also being close to the house so that they can be close to the children and they can bring the children along so they can remain full-time mothers. So what am I going to layer this video with? There's still a trigger I wanted to layer this video with. I'm thinking, what was I going to use? I'll figure it out afterwards. Anyway, so yeah, like, and I think it's so important. So okay, when we talk about school, we talk about teaching young girls the importance of these things. Teach them the importance of using the internet to make money. So you're at home, you can still do some things to earn money and whatnot. So how do you make money online? What are some cool things you can do to occupy yourself using the internet, using AI, using all these sort of things, while still dedicating yourself to your household? So you can actually teach that in school. I remember watching a video. There's this school in Japan where they actually teach girls how to be online influencers and all these sort of things. Now, I don't know about the influencer part, but like, the internet has its own economy that you can tap into. Content creation, whatever the case may be. You can sell goods online, shipping them here and there. Things that aren't too intensive, so that they're not, distracting you from the main role of being a mother, but you can still, diversify your interests and have a whole bunch of things that you can do that are mentally stimulating and can even generate income, which you can use to support the house. So you can sell crafts online, you run a blog, do freelance work. So maybe you edit, or like you do like designs or whatever the case may be. There's a whole bunch of things. It's limitless, right? There's so much you could do. And community-led businesses. So outside of the internet, you can have a coalition of moms who come together and, you have community-run businesses, whether it's a bakery or whatever, I don't know. You can be selling clothes that you made, homemade clothing, all this sort of stuff. Like, these are real things that used to be done back in the day. But there's, like, women who do all sorts of things while being stay-at-home moms and would sell and engage in all types of commerce while being full-time mothers. So it's doable, and there's historical precedent for it. So it's about collaboration. So selling examples here, like selling baked goods or organizing local projects. You know what I call this? I call this the stay-at-home economy. And I think that's a fire title. The stay-at-home economy. It's exists outside of the corporate economy, or economy where, if women are fully committed to motherhood, they're at home. Men would be outside working, as was traditionally the case. So men would be running the corporate world essentially, still kind of are, but yeah, just more so than we are right now. But you have these parallel economies. You got the stay-at-home economy, you got, I guess, the corporate economy, for lack of a better term, and they'll just both have their own vibe. You're both doing your own things, and both are important, both are essential, both are fulfilling, and amazing things can come from both worlds. But it's like, it doesn't have to be like, if you're a stay-at-home mother, you just stay at home, take care of the kids, and that's it. You don't have anything else interesting to do with your time. You give people something to do, and it's not too much of a commitment. So if you're someone who isn't the best at running a business or whatever the case may be, you can still find a niche where you can fit in, where you can help. Like, you can just show up at like a sale where they're selling stuff, and just hand stuff out or hand out flyers or whatever the case may be. Like, it's so malleable, and it can include all different types of people, because you need to understand how society works. Because most people don't grow up with a very specific vision of what they want to do. Most people just go where they're guided, and that's the career they end up taking. A lot of kids, they take the careers that their parents told them to take, or their teachers told them to take. So keeping that in mind, it's not necessarily about having a dream, but more so about having something that's useful for yourself to do, so that you feel fulfilled and you're using your time wisely, and you're being productive. Not everyone has a very unique and specific vision for their life. Some people think they do, but they get into these things and they're still not fulfilled, or they're just not good at it, or whatever the case may be. The reality is, for most people, what you really need is just something that's productive and is contributing to society. So with the stay-at-home economy, so many roles can emerge that are fulfilling, that are fun. It's not too intensive. There's not this big burden to commit to something, because it's not the corporate structure. The corporate structure works different, where you have to do what you have to do, and no one really. It's not necessarily about your feelings, but it's more so about necessity. So in the corporate world, if you're not feeding up to the task, you just get fired, and then you can't provide for your family anymore. Whereas in a stay-at-home economy, if you don't feel like doing it, you can just stay at home. And no one will hold it against you. It's just, we're doing this because we can. It's not like a survival thing. No, well, it supports the house. It bolsters the house income. It makes the stay-at-home lifestyle sustainable. So if your husband gets retrenched, as an example, for a period of time, you know that, okay, we still have these other forms of income coming in, so you can want finding a job. It's not a train smash. Because an argument that women always make is that I don't want to. Well, look, I think it's important to depend on your husband. Okay, this idea that you can't trust him, or you're just living in fear constantly of the worst happening. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's healthy. So you should depend on your husband, but I do understand why you'd also want some safety nets if the worst happens. Like, maybe he gets retrenched, or he gets hit by a bus, and all of a sudden you're left to fend for yourself. So the stay-at-home economy would help with that. I like that term, by the way. I came up with that. I don't want to. If someone ends up using that, you need to run my check. But let's see what else I wrote here. Yeah, you know what? It's about finding pride and fulfillment in your own way. It's so important to emphasize that men and women are very, very different. And an issue we keep running into in the corporate space, and in spaces where men and women are together, is that women will constantly be trying to, shift the standards, because men are very like go, 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 very competitive, relentless hours and all these sort of things. Women, they get pregnant, sometimes they go through menstrual cycles. There's all sorts of things women go through. So they'll be trying to negotiate different terms or like a shift in workplace environments. And it's a problem because we're trying to maintain the same consistent standard, but you've got two different groups of people who function very differently fundamentally. And you're trying to apply the same standard to them both. It can be chaotic. So the stay-at-home economy, things are different. It's more malleable. The schedule is different. So you can do things in your own way that appeal to your strengths as women, and it's not going to be as competitive. Women tend to be more community-oriented. They tend to be more focused on working together. An interesting case study for this is with war and violent situations. Women tend to be more their approach to conflict resolution tends to be more emotional. Like, let's talk it out, let's be reasonable. Not let's be reasonable necessarily, but it's like, let's use our words, and like there's more emotion behind it. Like, where men are just more like cold and pragmatic and like, hey man, we're not gonna necessarily try and talk things out if violence can just get things done very quickly. We're more like aggressive in that sense. The reason why I don't want to use the word reasonable is sometimes emotions get in the way of reason. So sometimes you can't talk to someone, like sometimes it's not gonna work. But the point of why I was saying that is because women tend to be more collaborative. They tend to talk a lot. I'm not saying that to be disparaging. It's just, so I feel like when y'all are bunched together and you're kind of trying to build this economy together, it'll just be so much more suited to your strengths when men aren't a part of that and men are doing their own thing. I think it'll just be really productive that way. But that's my take on that. And then you need to make it affordable. The stay-at-home lifestyle needs to be very affordable. And like I talked about Italy and Japan and Hungary and a lot of these countries, there's so many economics incentives that they're trying to give people to make having children more attractive and more affordable. They can do more of that. There's a lot of things we can do with regards to the economy to make it more affordable. Also, I think if women leave the workforce in large numbers, so in the same way that it was like a minority of women that were in the workforce in the past, like maybe like 30-something% or less. It depends on the country, of course. But it wasn't that many. It would say like 20 to 30% of the women were participating in the workforce before the civil rights era. And then after the civil rights era, it skyrocketed like 60+%. Absolutely massive numbers. So it was a humongous shift. But so you need to understand supply and demand. Because there's a massive supply of labor, the demand for labor goes down, therefore the price for labor goes down. People get paid less money. So in the face of AI that's coming, it's here, what am I saying? A lot of jobs are going to be on the chopping block, right? This will be an opportunity for women to go back home. Hear me out. Not all of them, of course. Go back home, a lot of y'all going to lose your jobs anyway. And for men to fill in a lot of gaps. Now, with men, the trades, this is crucial. This is a crucial part of the argument. A lot of white-collar jobs are going to be taken. A lot of white-collar jobs are going to be created as well. So a lot of jobs in AI management, for example. But the trades in particular, at least for the next 2, 3, maybe 4 decades, the trades are going to be very lucrative. So I'm talking about your electricians, your plumbers, your craftsmen, like guys who just work with their hands. That's going to be very valuable because AI, robots, whatever, they still have a long way to go before they can be effective in environments that require a lot of spatial reasoning. If you think about fixing the plumbing of a toilet, a lot of the time there's so many variables, right? These are unpredictable situations. There's a lot of talk about wiring a house, like every house is different and all these sort of things. So when you're asking a robot to do these sort of things, it requires a lot of dexterity. It requires a lot of flexible thinking that AI at the moment at least is not capable of doing, especially when you put it in a physical vessel and it has to use its hands to do these things. It'll be a long day. It's not going to get it done. Not now at least. We still have some time before we have machines that are capable of that level of specificity and spatial reasoning and intuition. Like there's just certain things you have to be able to do. Like you can feel the vibrations of an object and know where, okay, in this pipe, this is where the issue is, or this particular electrical device is where the issue is, and all this sort of stuff. Just being able to use your hands and feel things and sense things and all that sort of stuff. AI has a long way to go before it gets there. So there's still some time before those jobs get they will get replaced eventually. But I looked it up. I think there's a few decades, and a lot of people agree that trade schools are gonna be the place to be for a lot of people. And these are jobs that are typically handled by men, and also they're very physically intensive. So it's not to say women can't do them, but most women prefer not to do them. So I think men will flock into these spaces, and I think a lot of men will get into AI management. I think even though, so it's a skill thing as well. You have to be skilled to do a lot of these jobs, but also you have to have the desire to do them as well, which a lot of people don't. Just plumbing is not seen as a glorious profession, even though it pays very well. A lot of these guys can end up earning six figures, especially when you have a lot of clients. But for whatever reason, people are just like, I don't want to do that. Even though he earns more than you, bro. What are you talking about? So any young dude who's wondering, what do I do with my life? If you're not super specific in terms of what you want to do, you're just trying to find something that you can do to make money and you can support a family with, get into the trades. I personally don't think I'm gonna get into it just because I'm clumsy and I know what I want to do with my life. I think I'm very specific in terms of the way I think and my particular skills. But a lot of guys are much more flexible. So, bro, that is a big dub. If you can get into the trades, it's like you don't need some fancy university degree to get into trade school. You can get into trade school straight out of high school. It's like, and these guys earn bang. And I think the demand is going to go up. The demand for trade labor, so electricians, plumbers, certain artisans, all this sort of stuff. The demand for that specific labor is going to go up because I feel like as technology advances, I think, like I said, there are going to be a lot of AI management roles that pop up and who knows what else. And, people will flock into those spaces, and maybe what you'll see is that less and less people are getting into the trades. So there'll be maybe a labor shortage in that area. Therefore, the demand will be very high. So people will be willing to pay more than usual. So you can clean up, man. You can really clean up. Now, it could be the opposite that's true, that men just flock into the trades, and then the demand lowers and the price lowers, but it'll still be a good livable wage / income. But these things working together. So the reason I was saying that is if women leave the workforce in large numbers, the demand for labor will go up. Men will make more money, just logically. And then robots at the house. Robots at the house, I think, will be a big game changer. There already have been some ads being run. I saw a specific ad. I forgot the name of the company, but this is a real ad. It's a real ad. It wasn't some spoof or anything, of a robot that was doing in-house chores. It was doing house chores. It was cleaning, it was cooking, it was, moving picture frames and stuff. So if you can think about the implications of that, if you're a stay-at-home mom, you don't have to be stressed about chores all the time. Like, if you don't feel like cooking that day, you can let the robot do it, and you can cook a decent meal. We're getting to that point, guys. We're getting to that point. It might not be able to do like the super intricate stuff, but basic stuff, like basic dishes, and they'll get better and better over time. I really think in the next 5 to 10 years, they will be everywhere. By 20, what are we in? I think by 2030, a lot of people are going to have these things in their houses, for sure. By 2035, they'll be everywhere. Just like cars. They will be, I think there'll be more robots than humans very, very, very soon. So we got to utilize them when they're here. Some people are worried about that, but hey, it's happening whether we like it or not. So, this will free up time for mothers to dedicate themselves to their family, and we talk about the stay-at-home economy. It's kind of funny, but it's also a sick name. They can also dedicate their time to these community events, collaborating with other women, and making money, all this sort of stuff to support the household. It's also more time for romance, getting busy in the bedroom, having children, going on dates, just living life, enjoying life. Like, guys, it could actually be fun. It could actually be very enjoyable. You could take a lot of the drag out of that lifestyle and address a lot of the flaws of the old system, where your women are just burdened. At least some felt burdened by all the housework and whatnot. And I think robots are a eventuality. I mean, they're already here. There's ads running for them. So it's not even hypothetical. And they're being marketed as being like housemaids, basically, just doing chores. That's how they're being marketed. So you can see that there's a clear indication that this is what they're supposed to be doing. And I think we're just a few years away from that. They already exist and are being shown on camera doing these things. So how long before you're able to purchase them? Who knows? But we're not far away from that. So if you're like super young, if you're like a teenager right now, or maybe in your early 20s, by the time you are married and have children, I think that would be an option for you. They'll just be able to take on more and more and more and more tasks as they get more advanced. If you want it to tend to the baby so you can take a nap or rest or go do something, it can. Now, I don't know if I'd be comfortable leaving my baby with a robot and just leave the house, but if you want to go to the next room or just leave for a short period of time, you know that it's safe with this thing. And we just shift the message, man. Like, this is a matter of survival. The reason why I'm pitching it in this way, and I always talk about it so much, it's a matter of survival. This is an urgent crisis. It's an urgent crisis. We're talking about population collapse, guys. We're talking about the erasure of entire cultures. It's extinction. When you're shrinking and shrinking rapidly, it means you're racing to the bottom. And at the bottom is extinction. So if nothing is done, if you just keep going down this route, a lot of people are going to suffer. People are suffering right now. I've talked at length about the crazy stuff that's happening in Japan that no one really talks about. Shutting down villages. Old people are dying alone in their homes because they have no one to take care of them. They don't have siblings, they don't have children. And they're being stacked into these urban centers because the small towns and the villages they grew up in are being shut down because there's not enough taxpayers to keep them functioning. Businesses are closing down, all this sort of stuff. It's like, I don't want to over-exaggerate, but it's like, it really is that bad. If you just look into it, people talk about this. I've seen other Japanese people talk about this, so it's not just conjecture on my part. And there's so many articles on it. There's so much data on this. Like, it's real. South Korea is even worse than Japan. It's even worse. Italy's going through it as well. So guys, it's a real crisis that needs to be treated like one. And when you understand that this is a crisis, you understand that we have to do what we have to do. And I don't think there's any other way. Really don't think there's any other way out of this. Because what other solution is there? People think if we just improve the economy and just do what we're doing now, everything will be fine. It's like the fundamental issue isn't the economy. The fundamental issue is people don't want to have kids. That's the fundamental issue. I'm convinced that if you give people $1 million each, nothing will change. It sounds wild, but I really do believe that. I really don't see how a woman can have 4 or 5 kids and also have a full career in another realm. She's a businesswoman, or she's a lawyer, or how can you be the best mother while also juggling this very intense career? It doesn't make sense to me. So we have to be honest about that and treat this like an urgent crisis, because it is. If we don't do something, every country will turn into South Korea, which is a horrific scenario. Even Africa is going in that direction. Africa is the only continent that's growing, but by the year 2100, I think that's when we'll dip below replacement rate, and then we're just going to be headed in the same direction as everyone else. So we're still growing, but eventually we're going to start sinking as well, and then we're going to experience the same economic hardships. Well, we're already going through economic hardships, but if things improve, it'll just be downhill again. After enjoying a brief moment of success and prosperity, it's just back to poverty again, which is crazy. But this time we won't have the benefit of having large populations, which is it'll just be a nightmare scenario for the whole world. So this is a problem. So we have to focus on the next generation. I think some of these girls who are super entrenched in career and whatnot, I think they're too far gone. I don't think some of them can be convinced. But I think when we talk about younger generations, girls in their early 20s, some of them are in high school, whatnot, when you can get that message across that being a mom is a great thing, being a wife is a great thing, because you can convince them that I think when they eventually get into those roles, they'll perform well and help sustain humanity. Such a crucial role, guys. Can't overstate how important that role is. So talk about media, we talk about school, we talk about the stay-at-home economy, we talk about just overall cultural messaging around this issue. I think when you combine these things, I think that is the way we get these birth rates up, we get these fertility rates up. I don't think there's any other way to do it. You can fix the economy as much as you want. I think it's Sweden that tried their damn best to provide all sorts of economic incentives. There's so much paid leave, and women can have it's just paid leave at work, and tax credits and all sorts of benefits, social benefits for mothers, and also they tried all of that. And I think the best they could do is bump their fertility rate from 1.5 to 1.7. That's it. That's all they did. Because the narrative is that a lot of people push is that if we just had more money, we'd have more kids. And I think that's true for some people. I think some people are being honest when they say that. But with all these countries, what we've seen is that no matter how easy you make it for people to have kids, a lot of people just don't want to have kids. That's just the reality. Because all of these countries that are trying so hard to make it as easy as possible for people to have children, they're making the economy family oriented in that sense. You're still not seeing, they're still shrinking, they're still racing to the bottom. Each generation cutting off, boom, boom. It's tragic. Which tells you that the issue is not economic in nature. Fundamentally, the economy is important. You want a good economy to facilitate these things, but the issue fundamentally is cultural. You need to change the messaging in schools. You need to convince young girls that this is a good thing. Being a wife, being a mother, it's more important than having a career, to be frank. Because if you don't, look,
if we lost all lawyers today, lawyers are a fairly recent invention. We've been fine for most of history without them. Not to say you're not doing important work if you're a lawyer. I'm just saying, if we lost lawyers, like, we would manage. It wouldn't be the end of humanity if we lost lawyers. But if you lose mothers, like, we're cooked. It's such an essential role. Yet that's the one role women just don't want, which is so wild to me. That's a generalization. Maybe some women don't want it, but obviously we still have a lot of mothers. But we're dying, guys. As a population, we're dying. And that's not an exaggeration. Rapidly shrinking. It's very troubling. So the messaging needs to change. I believe there's a fundamental cultural issue. People keep talking about the economy. If the economy is better, the economy is better. If the economy is better, nothing will change. Not that much. I think we would see temporary spikes in fertility rates, but it'll just go down again. Like what we're seeing in countries like Sweden. They got from 1.5 to 1.7, I think. And they're still below replacement rate. They're still shrinking. And eventually, what you're going to see with those numbers, they're going to go down again. Because it's not a sustained upwards. If it was just going upwards gradually, then it's like, maybe there's something there. But that's not what's happening. They're stuck at 1.7. They're not going anywhere. Because the narrative wasn't true. It's not about the economy. So yeah, I talk about these things, and I'm sure I lose some people, but guys, I'm just so passionate about this issue. I think it's so important, and it just interests me. So let me know if you made it to the end. Shout out to all the people that made it to the end, man. I know some people don't like this topic. I'll be getting in trouble with some people at least, but it's so important that we talk about this. No one else is talking about this, not in this way. I haven't seen anyone talk about this issue in this way. And especially proposing the solutions I propose, because everyone keeps making economics like proposals. I'm like, it's not going to solve the problem. The poorest continent on earth has the most children. Make it make sense. The poorest continent on earth, Africa, by far, it's not even close, has the highest fertility rate, has the youngest population. All these other countries have aging populations, a whole lot of old people walking around. We have a whole lot of young people walking around. Yet Africa is the poorest continent. It's not the economy, guys. Stop kidding yourselves. Anyway, I've gone on. Let me know what you think in the comments. I have to pray that I'm going to I think that's something to watch as well. They make it home and unique. And guide them on the path towards peace and prosperity. Thanks for blessing this person. Wonderful people in life, love them, take care of them, bring them to the best of them. Thanks for maintaining the ones related to do the same thing. Thanks for blessing this person with love and marriage, to sustain that love and marriage and make it very happy. Thanks for blessing this person with a spirit of gratitude, so they can give thanks for all the wonderful things in life. And by giving thanks, they can find peace, contentment, and attract evil and blessings. Let your presence be found in this person's life, so know your God, that you love them. And yours will be there for them. Good health, long life, and happiness over this person. Everyone care about it. My name, praise Jesus, and pray. Amen.